Well, good day to you all. This is Joseph Antell with Adjuvant Protocols for Healing. I'd like to welcome you with my blessing today, continuing our part 2 of a series on the B vitamin complex. As you know, I record these sessions so that you can listen to these at your leisure if you want to review what some of the conversation today consists of to make sure that your understanding goes deeper. And this series that I've done on my YouTube channel of 55 different lectures consists of all of you working with me in creating this information and these webinar lectures to remind people of basically the doctorly philosophy of life and approach to healing through nutrition. And so this, of course, as I say, is devoted to my book, Adjuvant Protocols for Healing. And we will continue these into next year. And I hope you're enjoying these for sure. We looked at last time acknowledging that the B vitamin complex has two parts. It has the part known as cataplex G, as in gold, and as in Goldberger, and I explained and showed you a video of how that product got named cataplex G. Now, some of the new information coming out of Standard Process Corporate, they have renamed that cataplex B2, but I still continue to refer to that as cataplex G, as you know, in honor of Dr. Goldberger, which really revealed the truth and that there was and is a tremendous nutritional deficiency primarily in vitamin B3 and vitamin B2. Yeah, of course, that has been remedied by synthetic B3 and B2. But we acknowledge that all the B vitamins must occur together in nature to use them properly. And you could say, well, there's no more pellagra now, referencing that G component, the vasodilating, the nerve relaxing side. There isn't pellagra. Chronic diarrhea in people, skin conditions of any kind really are tied in with that. And of course, depression, anxiety, and other brain dysfunctions. They still exist. There is still a nutritional deficiency. That won't be admitted, but it's the fact, nevertheless, as far as I'm concerned. But in this part 2, we're going to focus in on the other side of the B complex. Now, as I said, please remember that in Standard Process, all the B vitamins are occurring together. As far as I know, there's not another company that has that fact, because all of the B vitamins in the B complex occur together only in nature. They're only if the B complex were, no matter where you're getting from, you read the label, if it does not have a food source on there, it does not have all the B vitamins. Therefore, it cannot work in its entirety. And also remember that synthetic, we'll just use the Bs because that's our topic today. Synthetic B vitamins, for the most part, the body does not recognize in its utilization. The body only recognizes what is natural in food, the content of food. And so today, as we look at the other side of the B complex, which is primarily B1 and the unrecognized vitamin B4, F-O-U-R. And that's what we're going to get into today for sure. And if we look at the B4 factor, so I'm going to just use today the B4 factor. I'm not going to keep saying B4 and B1 because B1 is primarily useless without the B4 factor. You would have no arrhythmic patterns if the B4 factor was well and used in our society through food. You wouldn't have any. And I'm going to show you soon here that there's an epidemic of arrhythmic patterns in the world, especially the United States. So you could say that this arrhythmic factor, well, where does the rhythm of the heart come from? Well, we know that the cells of the heart are unique to any other cells in the body because, as Mark Anderson has said, they beat. They have a rhythmical impulse contained within themselves. No other organ of the body has cells like this. They're unique to the heart. And so science over the years has been determined to try to find out what is the source? Where does that impulse come from? So I would like to leave you in the beginning with this thought of something that's been recently, and I've shared this on my other lectures, the heart sound recording webinars that I've done. A few weeks ago, I shared this. Scientists detect heartbeat-like signals from the sun. The discovery is unexpected. So what I want to leave with you is for all of us to keep our minds and, of course, our hearts open to where the origins of these various unfound truths, undiscovered truths originate. So I would like to leave you with this thought today in the very beginning. A team of researchers has made an unusual discovery. A series of heartbeat-like radio bursts emanating from a solar flare thousands of miles above the sun's surface. And they're still trying to figure out what caused them. Is this the rhythm of the universe, which our sun is involved with, our sun is involved in, and therefore so is the planet, and therefore so is our human bodies? I would say yes. These impulses come from places where science cannot figure out. But nevertheless, that doesn't make them not there. However, the origin of these repetitive patterns, also called quasi-periodic pulsations, has long been a mystery and a source of debate among scholar physicists. You added, this is the quote, is just another sentence from this article that he was quoted. The observations date to 2017 data collected by NJIT's radio telescope, the expanded Owens Valley Solar Array in California. In it, the team found patterns of solar bursts that repeated every 10 to 20 seconds, which the team likened to a heartbeat. Interesting, huh? Did these go away? No. They just found them in the solar burst. They're there. This is the first time a quasi-periodic radio signal located at the recognition region has been detected. Well, that doesn't mean it wasn't there. It's just they had never seen it. With the new telescope, now that they're using in outer space, they have seen all kinds of things. Galaxies, other suns, other planets, other galaxies, other planets like Earth that they hadn't seen before. The James Webb, I couldn't remember the name for a second. You said in the statement, this detection can help us to determine which of the two sources caused the one. Well, I would say to you, these two sources that are detecting this come out of the one. So I will leave you that thought to begin with. If anyone ever says to you, and before I ever heard this, people would ask me, well, Joe, what do you think the origin of the beating of the heart comes from? And I always said the sun. I never dreamt that they would actually correlate that idea with possible truth. So, as I said, let's look a little bit about heart arrhythmias, because when you talk about the B4 factor, AFib and atrial flutter on the rise in the US, the B4 factor is the key to it. It is the key to all rhythm, electrical expression in the body, for the brain, for the heart, for the gut, for the whole digestive system. All of the rhythms in the body need an electrical current to function. A recent study published in the American Journal of Cardiology. This is today here. I don't have a date on here, but nevertheless, it's current. Shows that the incident of AFib, fibrillation, and atrial flutter, two common heart arrhythmias, increased in the United States between 1990 and 2017. Well, wait a minute. I thought there's plenty of B vitamins provided in milk, added in bread, in other substances, in other foods, cereals. Well, this shouldn't be. This can't be. Well, it be. It is true, because these synthetic B vitamins made in a laboratory do not contain the B4 factor and all of the B vitamins together. And it doesn't matter whether they say, well, there's no more pellagra, there's no more this or that related to B vitamins. It's there. It sits in the subliminal layers of human beings. The study points out to regional differences. You noticed I didn't say animals. And the reason I didn't say animals is animals eat grasses and eat various earth substances and convert those into electrical substances within their own bodies. That's why if we eat the organs of animals, liver especially, we get all of the B vitamins, because they inherently, it's part of their purpose on this planet. It's how the design was made. And of course, indigenous cultures ate the whole body. They ate all the organs. So they put them in soups, from tripe in the intestinal lining to sweetbreads in the thymus to the spleen to the tongue. By the way, the tongue has a lot of B vitamins. Now, you probably growing up never had tongue. Well, we were on the poorer side, not desperately poor. We couldn't afford steak or hamburger. A couple nights a week, we had organs of animals growing up. And one of them was tongue, which I absolutely hated. But nevertheless, that was the provision. That was the poor person's source of nutrition, which was better than eating the steak, the muscle meat. The study points to regional differences in the uptick of AFib and AFL, so AFib and flutter, with states in New England having the highest incident among men, and Ohio, West Virginia, Delaware, Louisiana accounting for the highest number of women with these conditions. Why this is, I don't know. Probably the type of food that they're eating, I would say. Deaths related to these conditions that cause irregular heartbeats also increase across the country, except in Alaska. It's very interesting, huh? Where death rates decreased among men and women. The study also found the number of cases and deaths among women had risen more rapidly compared to those of men. Arrhythmias occur when the heart's electrical system malfunctions. Well, I would argue this point. It doesn't malfunction. It is doing exactly what it should do based on the principle that it is lacking what it needs to function. Without the B vitamins, the electrical system, the B4 factor, the electrical system of the human body cannot function. It's not malfunctioning. Now, in their minds, it is. It is honoring the law of nature. If it doesn't have it, it won't work. And causes the heart to beat too fast, too slow, or erratically, according to the American Heart Association. Dr. Viles Gonzalez says that AFib occurs when the left chamber, upper chamber of the heart, or atrium, remember this, what we're talking about, the atrium. Remember, that's one of the chambers of the heart, or you could say ventricles. A ventricle, by the way, is a hollow part or cavity in an organ. Now, they don't say it's a ventricle, they say it's a chamber. Nevertheless, it is a ventricle. By definition, a hollow part. This atrium, remember that, contracts irregularly and prevents the heart from pumping enough blood to the rest of the body. Similarly, atrial flutter starts in the right atrium and prevents enough blood from being pumped to the lungs for oxygen. So when you don't have enough oxygen being pumped to the blood being pumped to the lungs aren't making oxygen. What does the heart do? Tries to go faster. It's got to have oxygen. And you'll see this relationship to the brain, which I have taught you and we have discussed for 10, 12 years now. Both conditions cause fatigue, palpitation, and can weaken the heart muscle over time, leading to heart failure and a significantly diminished quality of life. Additionally, these types of arrhythmias elevate the risk of blood clots and stroke. There it is. And here are the 4 chambers. Your heart chambers are 4 hollow spaces. Some are called ventricles, and the atrium is actually these 4 hollow spaces. That's important to remember too, related to what I'm going to talk to you next about within your heart. There are two atria, upper chambers, called the right atria and left atria. In addition, there are two ventricles, lower chambers, called the right ventricle and left ventricle. Each chamber plays an important role in your heart's functioning. In other words, everyone, all four must be functioning in unison, in harmony. The load on any one part of these fours is significant to the entire function of the body, whether the body is healthy or not, whether the body can survive or not. What do the heart chambers do? Your heart chambers manage your heartbeat and blood flow throughout your body. We all know what our heartbeat feels like, even if usually we don't notice it. That's an important part of this sentence, because Dr. Lee said, you should never know you have a heart. You should never feel it. Now, they're saying, of course, when you're scared or excited or exercising, it's probably more apparent. But ordinarily, when you lay down at night, your head goes on that pillow. You should not hear your heart. If you do, you need to get up and do something about it. You should not sleep through the night with your heart pounding, ever. But with each beat, a complex process occurs inside your heart chambers. This is why, everyone, this is why cardiomyopathy happens, a thickening of the heart wall, because the lower chambers, these lower ventricles, when they are not beating correctly, the body overcompensates and they thicken. And that's a problem. And that is also an issue, an autoimmune issue, where your immune system now is attacking the heart because it hasn't been functioning right and necrotic cells have leaked into the bloodstream. So you know the principle of that. You know the principle of using the protomorphogen. Your chambers keep your blood moving throughout your veins and arteries. They also make sure your blood receives the oxygen it needs to support your organs. What organ mainly? Your brain. Of course, all the body, but the brain especially, which we'll get to in a second. So there is the left, here's a chamber, the left atrium, here's a chamber, the left ventricle. You see the valve right here, if you're looking. There's the aortic valve. There's the, and here on, this is the lower, from that upper part of the heart. Remember they were saying this is where the AFib begins to happen and into the lower. And the same on this side. This is the right, this is the tricuspid. And then the mitral, aortic here, and then the pulmonic here. So the blood comes into this lower chamber, ventricle. The blood contracts, it goes out through this valve, this upper valve here, aortic valve, and it travels to every organ, gland, and tissue in the body through the vascular system. They say 60 to 100,000 miles, 100,000 times a day. On this side, unoxygenated blood comes back in, fills the right atrium. But it is interesting that these atriums are the source of these arrhythmias. And so it is also on this right side, this is also the source of the rhythm. Well, wait a minute. So this is where we need to focus in on. What is it missing? It is missing the B4 factor. You could say, well, what else, Joe? Come on, we need other things here. There are other things that play their part that help. But basically, arrhythmic patterns that are on the increase in this country and the world is a simple B vitamin deficiency, i.e., the B4 factor. And so the unoxygenated blood fills this cavity, and then that goes into the lower ventricle, and then when the heart contracts, it goes 1 foot about to the lungs. So this side of the heart is moving blood 100,000 miles. This side of the heart is moving blood 1 foot approximately. So you can see the significance of this left side. These 4 chambers or 4 ventricles, because I just read it to you. What is a ventricle? Here's the definition. A hollow part or cavity in an organ. Here's the organ, here's the 4 cavities. I'm emphasizing this because now it relates to this. This all came out of a conversation, and I don't believe that anyone has ever taught you this. I just was thinking about it out of a conversation with a healing a friend that does cranial sacral work. That's his healing work in this lifetime. He was talking about the 4 ventricles of the brain. I'm like, whoa, Andrew, what do you mean? And especially the 3rd ventricle, he was emphasizing, because this is where the brain influences the heart rhythm, either for the good or for the not good. Ventricles mediate the central nervous system, the mystery of structure and non-structure. Embryonic development of the central nervous system has grown out from the origins of the hollow neurotool. And I'm going to show you a little video. There's no sound. I don't know why we couldn't get it. I'm going to show this to you at the end. A hollow neural tube, which still exists as the fluid core of the fully developed brain and spinal cord. This is what these cranial sacral practitioners, this is what they work with. This is their gift to humanity. This is how they help heal. Brain growth has shaped and transformed the tube into ventricles and aqueducts. See the animation and images below to see how this takes place. Each cerebral hemisphere sits on a fluid bed of a lateral ventricle, and the 3rd ventricle lies at the center of the limbic system. Well, what's in the 3rd ventricle? The pineal gland, the hypothalamus, and the pituitary. Need I say more? And you know me in that part of the body. That's where all the light, all the healing originates, in this part, the 3rd ventricle of the brain, the center of the limbic system. The 4th ventricle sits between the brain stem and cerebellum. All 4 ventricles are in significant places. Just the perfect design. We are fearfully and wonderfully made, but not fear in that way, but respectfully and wonderfully made. One for each in the major sections of the brain. How different the ventricles are to the organs of the brain. The simplicity of fluid spaces deep within the huge complexity of the brain. The brain has almost an infinite number of connections. They've never measured the totality of them. And the ventricles, none other than with each other. It's like the space and fluid at the core are there to help the supercomputer balance and maintain homeostasis. Now, the reason I'm reading this, everyone, I know you can read this, is I want to make comments. This is the beginning part of arrhythmic patterns in the body. a supercomputer, the demand from the brain on the heart, the cooling system at the heart of an engine. However, the ventricles do have the other significant connection. They have unique relationship to the breath of life. So, has he gone esoteric? No. No. Cellular respiration is we considered that last time. Adenosine triphosphate, the Krebs cycle. We looked at that. It's the most boring thing to study, but it is the breath of life. And this ties in with this completely. It is part of this concept from a physical level to an emotional level, to a mental level, to a spiritual level. The breath of life. Not all places are the same in the body. Some places have a stronger connection to the force of life, As any practitioner will tell you, the ventricles are quite unique in their connection. This makes them reservoirs of vital force and adds another insight into how the brain manages to function and survive all its huge workings without melting down. Now, remember, as I'm reading through this, that if these four ventricles are in demand, do you think there's enough stress? Do you think the mental part of human beings' brains right now, what's moving in this country, what's moving in this world, on this planet, as one human being to the other, you don't think that the brains of human beings are in overload? Are they ready to melt down? Some of them have already melted down. A deep connection to the breath of life is unique to the ventricles. There is nowhere in the body that is as rich in this connection. It's as if you have dropped back into the original creation space, an inner sanctuary of health. This is why you and I have spent our lives doing what we're doing as health practitioners. We want to welcome people and help them to find the inner sanctuary of health. You could say, this is our calling. This is why we're here on this planet. And here it is, non-structure within structure. Non-structure within structure. Where is the impulse to the heart? Where does that come from? Where does all the function of the brain come from? Non-structure within structure. Emptiness and void exist at our very center. So it makes complete sense that stillness may be particularly expressed from here in the central, move slowly through these spaces. 450 milliliters a day is like a drip feeding in and out of the system, while on the outside of the ventricles is an electric power station. Now, this is the final point I want to make here. While on the outside of the ventricles is an electrical power station, where is that originating from? It's originating from the heart. Where is the heart electrical originating from? It's originating from the sun, consuming the vast majority of blood and energy of the body to create kilojoules of power output to sustain 1 billion impulses per second. The contrast is almost comical in its difference. The brain is hungry for food. It must be constantly fed to survive in health. So, 1 billion nerve impulses per second. This requires a lot of energy, what he's calling food. The brain not only takes from the ventricles, but also from the heart in its huge need for potency and blood. So really, I could have just read you this sentence, but I wanted to read this whole article because this is going to change your outlook, at least that's my prayer, on how you look at arrhythmias. This all ties back in. If the brain power plant, these ventricles and the electrical component, the electrical design around these 4 ventricles cannot get the energy from the heart, it cannot function. And the demand is greater than it's ever been in human time on Earth. The brain not only takes from the ventricles but also from the heart. It needs it. It needs the electrical energy that surrounds the ventricles and influences the heart. The brain needs it to function in its huge need for potency and blood. Interesting, the heart is essentially 4 ventricles, and the brain and heart are based on inner spaces drawing from a source of energy beyond form, the invisible. There he returns. The author returns to that again. That's why a healthy system will also show you its ventricle motion. And why? This is when they're working in craniosacral on your brain, on your head. They can feel the balance here, and they can reestablish that balance. And why there is such a strong potentization in the ventricles during still point. So this is a part of breathing in, breathing out, this technique called the still point. In shutdown, I notice the ventricles are commonly not available, and the central nervous system loses its access to simplify and health, and can therefore become hyper-aroused. Do you think people are emotionally and mentally hyper-aroused right now? Do you think that effect of that is having an influence on their human flesh, the cells of their human body? You better believe it. The nervous system becomes aroused in 3 stages, mirroring the organization of the sensory nervous system into 3 levels or 3 orders of neurons. The first level is the peripheral nervous system. The second is the spine and brain system. And the third is the cerebellum and limbic system. As hyperarousal develops, the ventricles shut down. Helping to reverse this process requires an openness in your perceptual field to ventricles and the fluid midline. So this is part of the craniosacral technique, where they'll press and then release, press and release, to get these ventricles to relax, to reopen and balance. See how important a fluid touch is to the regaining of order in the nervous system and to do traumatization and to de-traumatization. So I just wanted to show you this video and this correlation between the 4 ventricles of the brain and the 4 ventricles of the heart. Watch the development of the human brain in vitro. Watch where it starts. And there it is. So when you get this, Lynn obviously put this in the chat box. When you get this, you can listen to the commentary on it. It's truly amazing. So, and when they work with the craniosacral, they're working with the central sulcus, which are, again, defined. The central sulcus begins, I'm not going to go into that. Yeah, the different regions of the brain from the skull, that they can balance out this tremendous force of life, this power plant, and therefore relaxing it, which therefore puts less load on the heart. Now you could say, wow, this is a deep dive into a reason for arrhythmias. Well, everyone, they haven't come up with any answers for it, but there are answers. There are always things you can do naturally, and this is one of them. And here they correlate the central sulcus to attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, has been associated with a sensory motor defects. And the central sulcus divides both somatosensory and primary motor areas prompting. So research into how the shape of the central sulcus and ADD may alter brain development in these individuals. The chordal thickness and average maximum depth of the central sulcus has been shown to be larger for ADHD. So you can read this article and this other condition, which is also very important to brain health. And you can also read, because I need to move on, about craniosacral therapy. So my long-winded point is, if you have someone with chronic arrhythmias and they cannot, no matter what they're doing, of course, I'm going to spend the rest of the time on the B vitamin complex. Of course they need that. That's the one earth source. That's the one frequency from this planet that must be present. But there are other things you can do. People have said to me, oh, Joe, I did the supplements and they had to, give them drugs for their arrhythmias. They had to use other techniques, freezing parts of the heart for the, cauterizing different electrical parts of the heart to stop the arrhythmic pattern. It's just a Band-Aid. It's not getting to the reason why. And this is part of the reason why. What I showed you, the relationship of the four ventricles of the brain and the four ventricles of the heart. I'll leave you with this: self-regulation, self-correction, self-healing. And so the other two factors, for some reason, this slide did not come through, huh? Well, this was a case that Lynn and I worked on, and she had arrhythmic patterns. And so other than working with the craniosacral, with working with the brain-heart connection, and especially the third ventricle, the hypothalamus, the pituitary, and the pineal, related to heart rhythm, it's related to demand on the human heart. There is two other things that I wanted to just quickly review today. And the first one is, so this client of ours has taken all the supplements, had a traumatic emotional occurrence in her life. And so it could not get her heart rhythm back. And I'm sorry, I don't have this slide, but we'll get that to you at some point. It's in some of my other lectures. So we checked her gut biome. We checked for the health of her gut biome. And she had high yeast. So we did the weed and feed program, which I didn't put in here. And this was the after. The rhythm completely restored. Now, she didn't stop taking the Cataplex B core and the cardiotrophin and the organically bound minerals, the other things we had her on, and the calcium lactate. We didn't take her off of those. But here is the second part of things that you can do with people that have arrhythmic patterns, along with the supplements that are recommended. And this is the four things, as you've seen this before, that Lynn and I have agreed that we do on each client: the symptom survey form, complete blood work, and the heart sound recorder, and the gut GI panel 2. Check for parasites. And so the third and final piece, or I should say the fourth, because the first is taking the B vitamins. The fourth piece that I wanted to just leave with you today about arrhythmias has to do with the chordae tendons. These are the strings that go from the muscle of the heart, from the structure of the lower part of the heart, and they attach to the valves. Do you see this right here? You see the attachment? If you haven't been looking, you're just listening, look right here. These tendons, if they snap over stress and malnutrition, lack of nutritional substances, or if they lose their tone or become hypertoned, they will pull with the contraction of the heart. Because remember, they're tied in with the muscle. As the muscle contracts, they're pulling and relaxing, pulling and relaxing. This relates to the demand on the heart from the brain, for sure, and the health of the heart within itself. And as you can see on this side, you will see that if those tendons are off, the valve doesn't fully close. You see that right here? So there's leakage back into the atrium, into that cavity of the heart. And we'll show you that on the heart sound recorder. This is the beginning of heart failure and arrhythmic patterns. Because if the heart is leaking blood back in when it should be completely sealed, like here, for the refilling of this lower chamber, this ventricle, then that blood cannot move out the 100,000 miles. So what does the heart do? Well, its natural reaction, it's not an off reaction. Its natural reaction is to go faster. And here, and then we'll slow down and go fast and slow down and go fast and slow down. Here is the one of the primary causes of arrhythmia in the body. So now I've given you four things. And this is the products you want to think about for any tendon. This is in my book. Any tendon, any ligament, you've got to have the vitamin, the mineral, and the like protein. Okay, here it is: ligament repair and torn rotator cuff, etc. support, discs and ligament and tendon. Right? It should be tendon, but same tissue. You can use Ligaplex 1 because it is a source of manganese. There's the mineral. You must have the mineral, the right vitamin, mineral, and like protein to heal any part of the body. And the mineral for the ligaments and tendons in the heart is manganese. The vitamin is vitamin E, which is also in Ligaplex 1. And the like organ, the like, the like gland is the pituitary. So you don't have to get into all of these others unless you got a ligament, a rotator cuff or a ligament tear. Just use these two in relationship to arrhythmic patterns in the heart. So as I say, this lecture is really devoted to the B vitamin complex and the wonderful work that Royal Lee did in his lifetime, which really set the mark. It really provided human beings with what they needed, his understanding. And so, and in here, we put in at the beginning of this, the essential minerals related to the heart, which we know the number one is calcium, and then potassium, and then when you're on the slow side of the heart rhythm, phosphorus. And so the products related to that. And we know that this side, the B1, B4 factor, has to do with lactic and pyruvic acids through oxidation. It promotes motor nerve conductivity by restoring function of the myoneural junction, where the nerve goes into the muscle, where the nerves from the around the heart influence that the muscle contraction and relaxation. And essential in coenzyme systems, balancing acetylcholine, especially reactions. So again, what is this piece? It's just one bullet. This relates to the brain. Acetylcholine is a neurotransmitter that helps with the ventricle function of the brain from a nutritional standpoint. Opposes vasodilation due to lack of atrial capillary tone. So if you have someone with low blood pressure and they don't have enough atrial capillary tone, then this is where this B core comes into play. An example of that is to build up the fluid buildup in the heart failure due to its inability of the heart to pump blood in sufficient pressure to the kidneys. The vasoconstricting factors in cataplex B core. Remember, this is not going to raise blood pressure. It's not going to give you hypertension. That is a falsehood. Because remember, the other side is within the cataplex B core. All the B's occur together. So you see it more as a self-regulating function, now called cataplex B core. That will improve that. So you think of it more as tonification rather than vasoconstricting, but it's tonifying those blood vessels when the heart is weak. Tonifies tissue, heart, muscles in general. Also, the GI tract and blood vessels. So people with bulging colons, this is the key product for them. Any type of aneurysms, all of that, anywhere in the body, they need this side of the B complex that tonifies. And here are the factors, right? We talked B1, B4. Now, medical science has said there is no B4. So we're just going to use, because this is all we could see under the microscope, we're just going to use B1 and we're going to synthesize it. What is the outcome? Arrhythms are on the rise. That's the outcome of medical science. The mind trying to duplicate nature. It can't do it. Honoring nature is the key. And that's why the B4 factor that Lee preached about, called on the rooftops about, was never acknowledged to this day. But it exists. It is a reality. Also in the cataplex B core is pantothenic acid and B12 sources. And again, that adenine, adenosine triphosphate. So for that factor to work, you need the adenosine, which adenine is the nutritive factor to create the adenine. And so here are the classic, not only sources, but the signs and symptoms. Liver, yeast, nutritional yeast, rice bran, wheat germ, defatted wheat germ, beetroot, and they're all in the they're all in the cataplex B core, and they were discovered in 1897 by this doctor for beriberi. We'll talk about that in a second. Paralysis, nephritis, fibrillation, degeneration of the Isles and Langerhans, the pancreas influence of the B vitamins, heart block, arrhythmia, tachycardia. Well, wait a minute, Joe. I thought you said that the B2, B3 side is the relaxing side for tachycardia. Yes, but so is, in the instance of tachycardia, so is the B4 factor, because tachycardia is an arrhythmic pattern. Any arrhythmic pattern. Slow rhythm, fast rhythm. Inconsistent rhythm. So now we don't talk about this. Some don't even know what beriberi is in science mind a thiamine deficiency. It's actually a B4 deficiency, most commonly known as vitamin B1. Your body needs thiamine, but it also needs the B4 factor to break down and digest foods you eat, to keep your metabolism strong, to help your muscles and nervous system do their jobs. Beriberi can affect the cardiovascular system or central nervous system, because if your heart is not functioning, the four ventricles of the brain can't function either. And that is the beginning of the decline of the autonomic and central nervous system. The condition is rare in Western countries. No, it isn't rare. It's everywhere. If you have arrhythmic patterns, you have beriberi, where most people get enough thiamine in their diet. They do. They get too much of the synthetic, but they have nothing of the B4, unless they're eating those four foods. But the condition is relatively common elsewhere in the world. To treat beriberi, I'm not going to read that thing. So, and then another article you can read through on your own. What are the symptoms of beriberi? Fast heart rate, shortness of breath. Just close your eyes for a minute. Think of people, think of your clients, your family, maybe yourself, that have these symptoms. Fast heart rate, shortness of breath, leg swelling, numbness of hands and feet, constipation. So you could say, well, Joe, what other factors? And the factors are white rice, bleach white flour. Dr. Lee said we are a country of B4 deficiency because we bleach. The number one dissipation of the B4 factor from the wheat berry is bleaching it. Same with rice, alcoholism, dialysis, diarrhea, diuretics. And so you can read this article through too. Now, if you're looking at your computer screen, you wouldn't you wouldn't even recognize this gentleman. This is a person with beriberi. They have no nerve function, and therefore they have no muscle function. Now, on the heart sound recorder, what do we look for? Well, even if you don't have a heart sound recorder and you don't know how to read these, you simply take the mitral or tricuspid and look at the lub, S1. The heart should be lub dub. And that S1 in that closure, as the heart sound recorder measures and transcripts that closure, you can see that there are 3 peaks. That's what you want on every closure. That is the perfect closure. But then you need to look on the right side or the left. There's nothing on the left of this person, but look at the right. That is that leakage. That's where that valve is not completely closing that I showed you. Now, in that article that I didn't talk about, that can be a magnesium deficiency, but it is specifically a B4 deficiency. Now, you could say, well, Joe, if I take Cataplex G, will that clear this? It may, because there is some B4 in G, because G is from food sources, but it doesn't emphasize the defatted wheat germ that you really need. That is the most important part of bringing in the B4 factor. So the standard process over the years, I guess I should start with this one. Originally, Dr. Lee, and you can see this photo from Mark's archives, Mark Anderson's archives, which I really appreciate Mark sharing his knowledge and wisdom and slides with me. This was an original Cataplex B, but if you look at it, you can hardly read it, even though I'm blowing it up. What are the 4 sources of the B complex then, when he first made it in early 1950s? Yeast, defatted wheat germ, beets, liver, and I don't even think he had rice bran in there. So let's see what Lee said. Vitamin B4, an anti-paralysis vitamin. It is one that is not accepted. It wasn't even acknowledged. They thought Lee was full of it. They never accepted it as an important in people. They say it helps pigeons, and that's where they originally discovered the B4 factor. Pigeons were eating foods void of that B4 element, and they couldn't fly. They would just collapse to the ground. But it won't help people. They say it helps pigeons fly, but it won't help people. Well, that's nonsense. So we cannot talk about B4. So rated it as B. So they rated it as B1 product. But the B1 is not the active ingredient. Think about that. What is the active ingredient in the vasotonification side of the B complex? It's the B4 factor. We have sources here that are high in B4. The one that promotes, this is the one that promotes nerve function. Lee said this in 1955, of course. That was his original. So over the years, standard process had Cataplex B. We were using it with the heart sound recorder, still getting results. But look what they ended up putting in there, diluting the B4 factor. So good, they had liver, they had yeast, they had good. Then they put in porcine duodenum, beetroot, carrot, adrenal, the B12, the B6, sunflower, vitamin E, manganese, phosphoric acid, and inositol riboflavin. You could say, well, what's wrong with that, Joe? It's not enough. where we are in our culture now, it's not enough to reestablish the balance in people's bodies with enough of the B4 factor to stop the arrhythmic patterns, to refill the coffers of the body, you could say, the storage places of the body with B vitamins, because B vitamins only last in your system 72 hours. If you're not getting it, then you start down the rabbit hole of deficiency. And so it's been 2 years now. Mark Anderson and some other people, I assisted with some of the testing and my thoughts. They said, we would like to return to Dr. Lee's original formula right here. So what they came up with was the defatted wheat germ ended up being the #1 source, because that's what it is. Now you could say, well, and people have said this, well, I can't take, I'm allergic to wheat. But there's so little in there, less than 10 parts per million. But you really can't reestablish heart rhythm without the defatted wheat germ. You can do it somewhat with the gluten-free Cataplex B. It helps. It's got some in there. You're better off to take G, but I think G has some defatted wheat germ in it as well. But it's not enough. You must have enough of the food source of the vitamin B4 factor. So this is everything they took out from Cataplex B to the B core. Now you're going back to the original. Now, he didn't have sweet potato in his, and he didn't have carrot. But, it was a battle we had to pick, and we said, okay, at least we're getting down to his original 4 substances: beet juice, liver, wheat germ, and nutritional yeast. And so you can read through, how am I doing for time? Good. You can read through all these slides that I have and keep them. You can print this out and make a booklet for yourself. So if you're explaining the Cataplex B core to your clients, you can say, well, this is the most significant product for low blood pressure, for lactic acidosis, fatigue immediately after meals. Yeah, my father or my uncle, after we eat, he has to go lay down. That's not a good sign. You should have more energy after you eat. Now, maybe you're more relaxed and more comfortable, you're satiated, okay. Poor muscle tone, muscle pain after exercise. People are always calling me, Joe, after I exercise, I get muscle cramps, and they're going for the calcium and the magnesium and the E2 and the vitamin E, and that's all fine. But that is a B vitamin deficiency, everyone. And a lot of people exercise and they have a beer, which depletes their B vitamins even more. And that lactic acid buildup in the muscle is the final end content of that. Edema, if they have even little ankle swelling, even edema, by the way, as you get older. And I notice this, if I'm not consistent taking my Cataplex B core, I'll have Chinese food or pizza or just eat out. The amount of salt in food, and my hands are a little swollen the next day. I take B core, goes away. Slow heart rate, slow pulse, lack of energy, unwarranted fear of impending doom. How are we doing with that? I think we should ship a bottle of Cataplex B core to every household in this country and every household in the world. How about in Ukraine? How about the Middle East right now? And also, everyone, you may not remember, you might think of zinc in this, the need for hydrochloric acid. Good. Zinc, yes. If you're deficient in zinc, you'll need hydrochloric acid. And you won't be producing as much hydrochloric acid if you're deficient in zinc. But the need for hydrochloric acid is a B4 deficiency. So there is great significance that these slides that I've made up for you, that I've used many times, that you can read them through. But do not take them for granted, and I know you don't. But because once you lose motor nerve conductivity, once you lose control of the heart, it takes time to get that back. And I began this hour and a half with giving you the essential 4 things that you can do. Taking the cataplex B core, this side of the B complex is number 1, of course. And so some of this is a repeat of what I've already talked to you about. So I just wanted to take at the last few minutes here and just go through all of the B vitamins. We talked about the B1. Now you can look at this, the health of nerves, muscle tone for B1. B4 is the anti-paralysis vitamin. And I even, this is out of my newsletter, and that's why I'm recording basically this newsletter I wrote years ago, where you get one-word answer. If somebody says, well, my doctor says I need, my other doctor says I need pantothenic acid. So you could look it up and share with them. And you can tell them which side of the B, is it B core or cataplex G? So pantothenic acid, B5, is the anti-stress vitamin. Cataplex B12 is the omega. This is the one that we need now that I'm in my 70s. This is the one. This not only prevents certain types of anemia, but the longevity, the normalization of red blood cells, and on and on. You can read it. The B2, as we looked at last month, visual problems, anything with the eyes, blurry vision, excessive tearing, no tearing at all, allergies in the eyes, infection in the eyes, visual problems of any kind, think of B2. B3 is the antipellagra, diarrhea, dermatitis, and dementia. And do not, please, I beg you, don't be fooled that pellagra doesn't exist anymore. There are subliminal versions of pellagra that go on in almost every person that I've ever met. Oh, my daughter has this, this rough skin on the side of her arm. And they say it's a vitamin A deficiency, which they would be correct. But what is the real deficiency? It's the anti-pellagra vitamin. Vitamin B3, niacin. And so what is the woman's vitamin? Not only the PMS vitamin, but all of the stages of a woman's life is vitamin B6. Menopause, huge in menopause. Let's go into some of the other B vitamins that we don't even think about. Now, these are contained in the cataplex G, now known as B2. B2, B3, B6, B7. It helps with cradle cap in babies and the formation of new tissue, and it prevents overgrowth of yeast. Wait a minute. Are you telling me that Candida is a B deficiency? I am telling you that. It's a B7 deficiency. So what is the vitamin that is emphasized at the beginning of life? The alpha vitamin, as taught by Mark Anderson. is folic acid. That's B9. Then you have choline, the memory vitamin. And remember, this ties in with the acetylcholine, with that brain function. One of the things that they've found is people that have trouble with memory and Alzheimer's also have fatty livers. Oh, what does choline help with? Fatty liver. Can you see this correlation between the brain and the heart and other parts of the body? The muscle sugar vitamin in inositol and the anti-anxiety vitamin. This is the main part of the B complex for sciatic nerve issues. Works tremendous. What about PABA? It helps with instead of loading yourself with sunscreen, along with vitamin F, this part of the B complex helps you. The sun is too intense these days. It's killing us. No, it's not. You're just B vitamin deficient. Orotic acid. I hope I said that right. The primary source is Jerusalem artichokes. Vitamin B13. You probably have never heard of this unless you read my article. And it helps in any chronic disease, any heart rhythm regulation. So you could say that, wow, so if I had an arrhythmia I could not resolve in a client or myself, I could take B and G, yes, because vitamin B13 is primarily in the G formulation. Pangamic acid, and the source of this is apricot kernels. It's vitamin B15. This is the help. This is the key one to help with drug addiction, brain damage, inability to speak, stroke victims, underdeveloped children, autism, and schizophrenia. You could say, well, I'm getting a formulation with all B15. No, don't go there. That's medical science. That's the isolation, the reductionist look. It has to be in the complex, along with all of the Bs must occur together. By the way, fungal protein tubules, which are the extending arms of cancer cells from one to the other. And I learned this early on from someone very wise in standard process when I was 20 years old, 1972. And he said that in Arginex is a source of this B15. So you can look at the standard process products of what they show on the label, but there are other factors. There are B vitamins in Arginex, especially this B15 factor, which neutralizes these fungal protein tubules. I'd like to give a lecture, a part of a lecture on that someday for you. It's in Cataplex G. And Laetrile, wait a minute, Joe, you're telling me that in the B complex, Laetril's vitamin B17. That's the cancer elimination and prevention. This is why I did these 2 sessions with you, these 2-hour-and-a-half classes. Because once you realize the significance of the B vitamin complex, you'll know that that has to be at the top of the list. It has to be the number one product that you're taking. If not every day, at least every other day. I wouldn't go 3 days. Because once you have a cascade of running out of any of these substances, things begin to break down in your body. Now, I'm 71, my younger years, of course, we found standard process when I was 13, so I'm very blessed. Most people live their whole lives without a B complex. I don't, and you wonder how they do it. Well, they don't do it. And that's why they have all these issues as they get older. And so these are the clinical notes just to finish. So those are all the B vitamins that we know of. Now, Lee said there are many more B vitamins that we've never acknowledged, but they're there and what they do. And I would love to see some of those archives, though I've never seen them. Maybe Mark Anderson has them, I don't know. But Wally Schmidt did a wonderful, and he gave me permission before he passed away to use these, and from his book, clinical notes on compiled notes on clinical nutritional products. You should get this book. You have the source. I look at this book almost not every day, but at least a few times a month. I go back to this book. And what I wanted to really emphasize to you is the emotional part, the mental correlations with the B vitamins. That's what I want to end with. Mental correlations, increased psychotic tendencies. Have you driven in a car lately? The road rage factor in this country. Little old simple town, Loveland, Colorado, we have it. A motorcycle person just shot someone last week in Loveland. It was in the paper. Apprehension. I don't know what to do about this. I can't think. And this is the one for the aging. This is for me, even to this day. I go into these restaurants. The noise factor is beyond. I actually sometimes stuff Kleenex or tissue piece of napkin in my ears when I go into restaurants. Definitely movies. Too loud. That's a B deficiency. That happens as you get older. And this ties in specifically with the B side of the B vitamin complex. So what is the G side? The mental correlations. Excessively worried, the overthinker, right? That's a spleen deficiency. But first, we've got to calm down that third ventricle of the brain, all four, but specifically the third. That's a B4 deficiency and other parts of the B complex. Apprehensiveness. Geez, I can't decide. I can't make a decision. How many people have come to you with that? Doc, do you have anything from helping me, like, to make a decision about something? Now, you can't say, well, you can. And you would have my blessing to say it. Doesn't hurt to say it, to speak the truth. You can say, yes, well, I have something that will help with that apprehensiveness. You'll see hundreds of people I've helped with that. And they'll say, Joe, that Cataplex G is amazing about me getting more organized, sleeping better, being less suspicious, being less moody, being less depressed. And I've been able to not desire alcohol as much. And I've really lessened my worry. I don't worry as much. I trust life more, that everything's going to work out. Everything is okay and will continue to work out okay. And so this is the wonder, in my opinion, of really working with the B vitamin complex and all of its wonderful ramifications in human health. And so it's been my pleasure to share these two parts with you, this series. And I look forward to next month with adjuvant protocols of healing and getting into some of your clinical cases. And I'll write to you about that. So blessings to you all.